The alley stank of smoke and sweat, the scent of burned-out buildings mixing with the acrid tang of scorched metal. A small group of humans huddled near a rusted barrel, its fire barely holding against the night chill. Their clothes were ragged, their eyes hollow with exhaustion. The war had taken its toll, but not their spirit. An older man, his face lined with both age and battle, leaned against the wall. Jonas. He had been there, at Post Echo 7, the place where the squad made their last stand, and he was here to remind them. "You lot keep talking about heroes," he muttered, flicking a broken cigarette between his fingers. "You want to know about real heroes?" He took a slow breath. "Then you ought to know about the Revenants." Jonas had been a worker, not a soldier, a simple engineer keeping the station running. But when the enemy came, when the Varoon hunters dropped from the sky and turned the outpost into a war zone, his hands went from repairing machinery to dragging bodies off the street. The Varoon? They didn't take prisoners. The civilians had one escape route, the tunnels leading east. But the aliens were fast, spreading like wildfire through the outpost. If they breached the main corridor before the last civilians were out, no one would make it. That's when they arrived. 6 soldiers, the Revenants. He didn't know their real names. Didn't need to. "They weren't supposed to be there," Jonas murmured, staring into the fire. "They were on their way back to HQ, already past the evacuation line. Could have left. Should have left." He shook his head. But they didn't, because they heard the call. And they answered. The Revenants dug in at the last checkpoint, a half-collapsed barricade of sandbags and shattered steel. They had one objective, hold the corridor until the last civilian made it through. Jonas had been there, running for his life when the Varoon charged. The Revenants didn't flinch. They fought. Their rifles cracked like thunder. Every shot counted. One of them, a woman with a sniper rifle, never stopped calling her shots. "Target down. 4 left. Reloading." Another, a towering brute with a heavy repeater, laughed as he mowed down entire squads. "Come on, you alien bastards, come get it!" Jonas had barely made it to the tunnel when he saw the first Revenant fall. A plasma round took him center mass. He didn't scream, didn't beg, just kept firing until his weapon clicked empty. The others? They kept fighting. The last civilian passed through the tunnel entrance. Jonas turned back. He shouldn't have, but he had to see. The Revenants were still standing. 6 became 4, then 3. They were out of grenades, running low on ammo, and the Varoon weren't stopping. But neither were they. The sniper had switched to her sidearm, still calling shots even as her breath grew ragged. The brute's gun was slagged, so he fought with his fists, tearing into the enemy like an animal. One by one, they fell. But they didn't break, didn't run, didn't surrender. When the last Revenant stood alone, bleeding, broken, his rifle finally empty, he did the only thing left. He drew his combat knife and charged. And then the bombs fell. Jonas clenched his jaw. HQ had already scrambled an artillery strike. The Revenants knew that. They knew they weren't getting out. He let that hang in the air. "The last thing I saw before the tunnel doors closed," he murmured. "That final soldier, fighting with nothing but a knife." The fire crackled. No one spoke. The artillery hit 30 seconds later. When the dust settled, the Varoon were gone, and the Revenants, they were legends. Jonas exhaled, his gaze hard, unwavering. They could have run, could have saved themselves. He looked at each face in the alleyway, faces young, angry, uncertain, but they chose to stand, to fight. His voice was a growl now, low and burning. "And if you think for a second that we're going to roll over, if you think humanity is just going to let the Varoon take our homes, take our people," he gestured at the fire, at the ruins around them, "then you don't know what it means to be human." A pause. Then, a single voice. "To the Revenants." Jonas nodded. "To the Revenants." And one by one, the others joined in. "To the Revenants." A whisper at first, then a roar. And that was the moment. The moment a handful of survivors became warriors. The moment they decided the fight wasn't over. The Revenants were gone, but their war had just begun.